Good evening. Welcome to the workshop for the Mayor and City Council, City of Taneytown for the month of August. I will ask that Councilman Haynes please lead us in the pledge to the flag. All right, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I don't hear you, so stand by just 1 second while I try to figure that out. Yeah.
Mayor, is it everybody you're having difficulty hearing or just certain people?
I didn't hear any of the pledge, so but now I can hear you. So can we just go around, everyone unmute and say something so I can make sure I can hear you?
Yeah, I couldn't hear Daniel either. I think
Okay.
he just.
I thought he was muted.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't muted. I think that was a microphone error. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right, very good. My computer broke again for the 4th time tonight. We're good.
Lovely.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Haynes, for leading us in the pledge. I assume you did it well. Let the records reflect that everyone is present and accounted for this evening. I do appreciate everyone's cooperation. We're going to go into our review of the minutes. These are from the July 8th and July 13th meetings. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes as presented? All right. Hearing none, they will be up for adoption on Monday evening. With that, we're going to move into presentation mode. I believe we have Brian Lubenow is going to lead us in a wastewater treatment plant and sewer system update.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to share my desktop. I hope that goes well. Can everyone see my desktop?
Yeah.
Anything?
Nothing yet.
Oh, sorry, I got it now. Sorry, first time on this platform. How about now?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you again for having me here tonight to present on our sewer capacity status. This is primarily an update on what we shared at the March Mayor and Council meeting. We being Jim, Kevin Smeek, Jay, and myself, as well as the mayor, have been meeting on a every 2 to 3 week basis since the spring, making progress on the items that I presented at the last meeting. So that was back in March. So first of all, I'll get everyone back up to speed about what the issues were that we discussed, provide the updates on what we've been doing for the last several months. Finally, just highlight the next steps, our schedule moving forward, and kind of give you an idea of what we need from the mayor and council to be moving forward. And Jim will also provide some updates as well in the city manager report. If you remember, there are 2 primary areas of concern relative to sewer capacity, and they're interrelated to be sure, but we can separate them out into 2. One being I&I, inflow and infiltration within the sewer collection system, and the other one being compliance and capacity issues at the plant. So first of all, on the I&I side, the sewer system is made up of terracotta and PVC piping networks. The terracotta is installed 60s and before. It's known to leak rainwater and groundwater. So you can see in my second bullet point here, what that means is during dry weather, like we've been having much of the summer, the wastewater treatment plant sees flows in the neighborhood of 0.4 million gallons per day. But on wet weather, like we had yesterday, flows can exceed 5 million gallons per day. And that's because of all the rainwater that's getting in through primarily the older portions of the system. I didn't talk to Public Works Director Kevin Smeek yesterday, but I'm sure they were up in that 4 MGD range yesterday. I would imagine, with all the rain. I presented last time on a sewer replacement that occurred as part of the O'Brien Avenue Bridge, and that's somewhat by luck. The sewer had to be moved for the bridge project, but we noticed a drastic improvement in the sewer as a result of that small replacement. The other aspect of the capacity issue is at the plant. The plant has nitrogen and phosphorus limits on the discharge, and those tighter limits were the reason for the upgrade several years ago to the biomag process at the plant. Those limits float with flow. So lower flows, you still need to meet then lower limits. So when you get those wet weather events, they really make it tough to meet the those new lower permit levels. So making improvements within the system, in the sewer system, as well as making some optimization improvements at the plant, we're hoping those things come together and lead us towards MDE, compliance with our permit and MDE negotiations that proceed positively as a result. So I guess I'll pause real quick there if there's any questions on what the drivers are of these capacity issues.
Anyone from council have any questions thus far? All right, eyes are not glazed over yet, so I think we're going well. Mr. Lubenow, you may continue.
Good news, thank you. So what we've been doing, like I said, we've been meeting every couple weeks, and we've been working with some contractors, and we've been getting some, seeing some improvements. So first of all, the Public Works Department has done a survey of all the plan is to do a complete survey of the entire system. So that means Public Works employees going out to every manhole within the system, entering the sewer, entering the manhole, confirming what the material is. Because like I said, terracotta, the piping material is primarily what we're interested in here. Not only are they getting that, they're getting a GPS location for every structure. They're getting a depth. So all of this data will be really nice to incorporate into a GIS system in the future. Right now, they're just getting all the data, but in the future, the city really should be able to leverage that into a GIS system, which could incorporate into your work management system very nicely. So they're about 40% complete with that survey and expect to be done in October. Like I said, the O'Brien Avenue Bridge construction, that sewer replacement was finished, and we looked at the data from the downstream York Street pumping station and concluded that that project removed about 53,000 gallons per day of I&I. So the way to think about that is that's 53,000 gallons of capacity that the city can now allocate to new users, new development that was otherwise being wasted. The next one on the list is the Meadowbrook Interceptor, which is just downstream of that area. Basically runs from the Meadowbrook area through that low creek down to York Street. And we had that line cleaned and televised back in June. And the plan is to line that sewer early next year. And what that means is a lining material is pulled through that pipe, and it is cured in place, hardened, and that terracotta pipe, which was previously leaking to a large degree, is no longer leaking. It's structurally stable, and we've cut down even more I&I. So we anticipate, based on the condition of the pipe and what we removed at O'Brien Avenue, that'll remove another 102,000 gallons per day. So that's the update on the I&I removal front. I've included a bullet point here on the water and sewer master plan amendment, and I'm sure we'll get into that more later in the city manager report. But we submitted an amendment through the county to MDE, primarily related to the Taneytown crossing development. But what it did is it took advantage of those sewer reductions that I just mentioned, 53,000 and the 102,000. And it applies that to available capacity for Taneytown Crossing and other future developments. So we're already seeing the benefit of completed replacements as well as anticipated replacements, and transferring that reduced I&I into new capacity for new development. The other thing I can report on is in June, we started a flow monitoring study. That's an 8-week study. So what that entails is the city hired a vendor to install 7 flow meters within the sewer system. And those are collecting data every 5 minutes, flow data. So what that'll tell us when we combine that data with all of the pumping station data that the city collects, it'll give us a better idea of what areas of the city are leakier than others, which areas have more I&I, where we need to focus our continued I&I removal efforts. So as I said, that started in June. We'll finish in August. We're already starting to get some of that data in and starting to analyze it. So that is the I&I update. Moving then to the plant. At the plant, we certainly will see the benefit of reduced flow. That will help the operators meet permit, both on a flow perspective as well as a nutrient perspective. But we're also looking to optimize things at the plant, and we've identified a couple items where we can do that. The first is providing additional online analyzers. So these are probes, analyzers within the treatment system at the plant that give the operators more information so that they can operate the plant more effectively. So that effectively meaning meet permit easier and more regularly, and also optimize chemical usage and lower usage to save cost. So there's two angles there. One is we're helping the operators meet permit, and the second is we're saving money in doing that. So we got two proposals. One was from AASI, and they're the ones that provided the original equipment at the plant. It was for a very involved system, lots of analyzers, high capital cost, and even more importantly, a high annual operation and maintenance cost. That would have integrated into the system and provided the operators with real-time data, with adjusting parameters at the plant with all that data. We looked at that and we realized this is a lot of capital. This is even more O&M. It's probably overkill for what we need. So we took a step back and we found another new company that's offering a probe that's essentially a bioelectrode, which it looks at how much how the bacteria in the wastewater are, how much food they have, and how how bioavailable the waste is in the water. They had a very nice offer for $1,100 for a 3-month trial. And that data will allow the operators to get an idea of any toxic influent events that happen. It'll also give them a better feel for when they need to be adding chemical. There's a, and I'll talk about this in my next bullet, but micro C is essentially a carbon source that is added to drive down nitrogen in the waste, in the finished effluent. And having that sensor should give the operators some good information how they can optimize usage of that chemical. So we expect, actually, I was hoping that would be installed by now, but it's a Canadian company, and we got word last week that it's somehow stalled in customs. So they're working that out and hope to have that instrument installed later this month. Next, like I mentioned, we looked at this micro C, which is a chemical that's used at the plant, and we realized we're using a lot more of it than we originally intended, and that's to meet the tighter nitrogen limit. In 2019, the city spent about $16,000 on that chemical. It comes in small totes, several 100-gallon totes. If the city were to install a bulk storage tank, 5,000-gallon tank with a truck that comes and delivers, the cost of the equipment of the chemical per gallon goes way down, and the payback period on that chemical is about 3 years. I'm sorry, payback period on the storage tank improvements is about 3 years. So that's a project that I think will pay for itself quickly, has potential to save the city a lot of money as they strive to meet their nutrient limit more effectively. So again, that's something that I believe will be covered in the city manager's report later regarding how we hope to move towards procuring those improvements at the plant. And finally, ongoing compliance negotiations with MDE. There have been several periods of letter writing back and forth between the city and MDE. We've requested meetings, in-person meetings, several times over the past couple of years. Haven't gotten anywhere, but certainly we're willing to meet with them and continue to hope to resolve those compliance issues from the past. So next steps. We're going to continue that aggressive I&I removal program, and by the flow monitoring study and the data that provides, we'll have information on how best to proceed with that. We hope to move ahead with those improvements at the plant. Those would be the Sentry probes, as well as the chemical tank project. And related to those two above items, working on the sewer component of the capital improvement plan as the city plans on how they're going to fund those projects. We need to submit a wastewater capacity management plan for the plant. A lot of what went into the recent water and sewer plan amendment will go into that, as well as the information from the capital improvements plan, identifying the planned projects the city's has in place and has planned to meet the new to meet the capacity needs of the city. Finally, now is probably a very good time to start thinking about a benefit assessment fee analysis. That would be the mechanism by which the city would pay for some of these projects, and adjusting the benefit assessment fee to include the cost of these projects. So obviously, that's a much bigger effort, but it's probably a good time to start that now that we have this new batch of projects, at least on the sewer side. So my last slide is just a schedule, very rough schedule for these items. I can send this presentation you can look at this a little more closely, but they're all the items that I just talked about. You know, we've been moving aggressively since March, and I think this schedule shows a continued aggressive approach to addressing the I&I issues and also addressing the compliance issues at the plant. This schedule includes a lot of the items I just talked about, including some of the long-range items like the benefit assessment fee analysis and the future I&I project implementation, as well as the negotiations with MDE. That is about all I had. I certainly was going to hang on for the city manager's report to answer any questions that come up with regard to these items in his report. But if you have any questions at this point, I'd be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for your time. I do ask, can you go back 2 slides for me, please? Perfect.
Okay, good.
The chemical that you're talking about, the micro C bulk storage, you said how we have used more of it than we anticipated. And I assume that's because of the constantly changing restrictions from MDE or the numbers that they want us to hit. Do you expect our usage to continue rising at a certain level? Is there a point where it's too much? Are we going to use more by having more on hand? And what cost is that going to incur as well?
Right. So in a biological nutrient removal plants like what you have, there is often a need for a carbon source, which is what this is. And that's in the last step of the denitrification process, and I'm trying not to get too technical. But when we looked at this process that's currently at the plant, and we had a pilot study for it, we actually found that we didn't need micro C, that we met permit without it. However, we put the system in the event that it was needed. So the plant ran for a couple years actually without using it at all. We started the idea of how the plant needs to meet permit with that floating cap that I described became more clear. We realized we needed to be more aggressive in our treatment for nitrogen removal. And the way to do that was to start using micro C. So they only started using it, I think, in 2018. I expect that the online analyzer in the item above should optimize the use of the chemical, and we shouldn't use more than what we're using now. The permit limit, the nitrogen limit that we have to meet, hasn't changed since the biomag system went online, and it's not anticipated to change. So I don't expect we'd use more. If anything, maybe we would use slightly less, but certainly the chemical costs are going up. That's why you see in the payback period that anticipated, that assumed, I can't remember the percentage, but a pretty healthy chemical increase percentage based on the last several years of information, assuming that it continues in the same path.
Now, out of curiosity, and this may be a better question for Kevin if he were here, this particular chemical that you're referring to, is that available from a variety of vendors, or is it kind of like the magnetite where you only can get it from one place and one place only?
Yeah, so micro C is a brand name. So it is it's a proprietary chemical. There are other carbon sources. A lot of systems, older systems, were based around methanol, but there are explosion hazards of methanol. Micro C has moved into it. They're really the big name in the business. I honestly don't know if there's got to be others, but they of the market.
Okay. Very good. I think that's all the questions I have. I'll throw it to the rest of council. Do you have any questions for Brian while we're on this part of the agenda? Councilman Vigliotti, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, thank you for the presentation. My first question is, and you kind of answered it already. Could you go ahead and send us copies of the presentation when you're able?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I will send this around.
All right, thank you. So my second question. So with the reduction of I and then the improved analytics of what's going on, is there? And if you don't know the answer to this, that's okay. Would that in any way, shape, or form prolong the life of our sewer infrastructure and our equipment down at the plant? Like overall, is it going to help improve not just efficiency, but the life of what we're doing?
Well, I think that the best way to answer that is from a flow perspective. If you look at the last couple of years, we've had, other than this past summer, it's been pretty wet weather for the last several years. And the way MDE looks at your capacity is they take a three-year rolling average of your F. And our plant is rated for 1.1 million gallons per day. So with all that wet weather and all that I&I, the three-year rolling average was actually over 1.1 million gallons per day. So if you look at it that way, the plant has no capacity, you can't grow. It's treating a gallon of rainwater is not the same as treating a gallon of sewage. And that's a point that needs to be continually reminded to MDE. But with that being said, getting I&I out of the system is critically important. So I guess the way that it prolongs the life of the plant is through flow reduction, means they don't require you to expand the plant if you want to grow with new development.
All right, that's cool, and that makes sense. Thank you for that. And then the last question I have, and I know this is a very broad question, and again, if you don't have even a general idea about this, that's okay. Overall, with all of this that we're doing, I know, for example, you talked about if we were to, purchasing that storage tank, it would pay for itself in under 3 years. Do you have any idea of the cost savings that implementing all of these different steps will over the course of time?
I don't have a good feel for the, I&I, but obviously every gallon of water, it may go through 1 or 2 pump stations out in the system. There's an influent pump station at the plant. There's chemicals that rise with more flow. So yeah, I couldn't give you a number, but at every angle of the plant, pumping, blowers, chemical, it costs money for every gallon of rainwater that goes through there. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to put a number to it though. The biggest thing though is the transferring of I&I and flow that goes to the plant that's I&I to capacity for future growth. I mean, that's really what drove the amendment discussions, and it really drove all this deeper dive into this issue. And it's analogous to, on the water side, if you switch gears over to the clean side, it's analogous to removing leaks from your water system. Water that gets pumped out of the ground, water that gets treated at your plants, and then leaks out through a leaky pipe and never gets delivered to a customer, and you don't get any income from, and it prevents you from developing more, connecting more homes. It's the same thing, just sort of in reverse. A tighter system equals efficient, saving money in operations, as well as additional capacity to promote growth, if that's what the city wants.
And that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much for that. I almost guess you could say it's kind of like a ripple effect, that you don't quite know. We have an idea, but we don't quite know the monetary figure, the value that this is going to have over time. So that does make sense. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure thing.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Mr. Reifert, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to add, Kevin chimed in that when Brian made mention of the inflow numbers, our numbers increased after yesterday's rain, or after the rain by 1 million gallons from the day before. So just wanted to add that.
All right. Anyone else from council have anything, any questions or anything? No? All right. Brian, thank you for that presentation. I know you're going to hang around. I appreciate that you do.
Absolutely, thank you.
We're going to move into our next presentation, the Carroll County Water Sewer Master Plan Amendment. I believe I'm going to kick this over to Jim. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Brian touched on much of this already with his presentation, but I did want to point out that with the current amendment to the Water and Sewer Master Plan, we were able to get MDE on board with our methodology for determining capacity, which is different than the standard state methodology. Typically, the Water Sewer Master Plan uses a buildable land inventory method where we look at acreage available for development, and then based on the zoning of that property or that acreage, there's a standard number that this zoning district will accommodate this many units per acre, and you multiply that out by the size of the parcel, and then that equates to the potential demand for capacity. What we've been trying to argue for some time and finally have been successful with is that we're seeing that residential development does not typically use its full 250 gallons per day. We were able to provide a year's worth of water and sewer billing data, usage data to Carroll County for the amendment, along with all of the service addresses for water and sewer accounts. And the county was able to geolocate all of the accounts on the map, basically to make the map much more accurate than it has ever been in the past. And also using that year's worth of usage data from our billing system, they were able to apply a new average figure for residential and commercial usage. And we were able to use those numbers in our projections for the additional growth, the additional service area. I know several of you have had stints on the Planning Commission and are probably familiar with this, but I'm just going to real quick bring up one of the maps and show it to you to just give you a basic idea of what we're looking at. So I'm going to share my screen here for a second. So hopefully you can see a map with a lot of green shading on it. And
I don't see it yet.
That worked.
okay. All right. Try this again.
You got it.
Okay. Everybody see a map now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so this is the sewer service area. The darker green areas are considered the existing service or final planning area. The medium green is priority, and the hashed area is long range, meaning 10 years or farther into the future before we anticipate serving those properties. In the past, the sewer map, the green one, and I'll scroll down here real quick to the water map, the blue one, looked a good bit different, and that was based on trying to meet all the numbers based on the buildable land inventory. So we were in a situation where we could not demonstrate that we had adequate capacity to serve everything within our growth area. And having not approved a capital improvement plan for infrastructure improvements or capacity building improvements for many, many years, we did not have a plan in place that we could refer to speak to how we would serve this growth area. So a couple updates ago, we were able to move things. The county worked with the state, and they allowed us to have this long range category for areas that we really can't speak to exactly how we're going to serve. So that's the hashed blue or the hashed green. So the maps look different because based on our 3-year average flow at the treatment plant, with regard to the sewer portion, as Brian mentioned, the state looks at a 3-year average of our flows. So that drives the sewer capacity number, whereas our permit limits on the well side drive the water number. So with different capacity numbers, the maps look different. And of course, within the city limits, we prohibit private wells and we prohibit private septic systems. So really, if you're not in the same color area on both maps, it presents a problem. So we've managed to move away from that approach, and the water and sewer service areas now are a much closer match. And we're able to use a more data-driven planning approach than I think we have been in the past. So I just wanted to share these maps briefly because I don't think everyone has had a chance to see this. The Water and Sewer Master Plan is really a function of Carroll County, and they work with each municipality so that we can develop, we provide our numbers for our own system and our own growth area. So within the county master plan, there are components for each municipality, and our planning commission really is the one who approves that. So this is something that typically flies under the radar screen for mayor and council. So I wanted to kind of inform you a little bit about that and let you know of our success with getting MDE to support our methodology and agree that we do indeed have capacity, for example, for the Taneytown Crossing project, which really did drive a lot of this amendment process. And the county worked very closely with us. They dedicated a lot of time and made this a priority to squeeze us in this amendment cycle. And certainly, hats off to them for all of their efforts with this, and to their GIS staff for geolocating all of the service addresses and mapping them for us. But we are in a much better place now with the water and sewer plan than I think we have been in the recent past. So I did want to update you on that and share those maps just to kind of give you a better feel for what's involved in that amendment process. And hopefully your screens are back to normal now.
Yep, however we want to define normal, that's what they are. Does council have any questions for Jim regarding the Water and Sewer Master Plan Amendment? So, all right, I'll get to you in just a moment. I'm going to just say briefly, I know Jim has worked tremendously hard on getting this through. Jay's been involved. I've been involved. We had another big conference call today in hopes of getting this expedited for an upcoming development to be able to actually happen. There'll be more on that later, but we did have a positive phone call today, and I do appreciate the hard work that they're putting into this. There's a lot of government agencies that surprisingly are bending over backwards and expediting things that you don't expect from government agencies, but they're doing a great job with that, and we appreciate it. With that, Councilman Vigliotti, you had some questions?
Just two things very briefly, just to say thank you, like you did, Mr. Mayor, to everything that everybody who's put work into this, but also is there anything that you require from mayor and council to further this process along at all?
I don't believe there's any action from mayor and council at this point. I think Planning Commission has already done their job with this. Is that correct, Jim? Yes. So it's basically out of our hands. It's to them. The next thing we hear should be an all thumbs up and everyone's happy regarding the Water Sewer Master Plan Amendment. I forgot to mention that Brian Lubenow also was instrumental in getting this together. So again, thank you to all of them for everything they've done for this. Any other questions from council? Awesome. Jay, do you have anything to add to this topic?
No, I was going to cover a couple things under my report, so I'll just cover them there.
Great. Thank you, sir. Brian, you're satisfied with what Jim said?
Yes, missed the call today, but I'm happy to hear that it was positive. So good. Thank you.
Yep. We'll catch you up a little bit later about that.
Excellent.
Very good. Did I lose everybody?
Can you hear us?
I can still see you and hear you.
Okay. Everyone just froze on my screen all at once. So making sure. Moving on, I will ask the council if they have any conflicts of interest on agenda items this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Moving into resolutions, ordinances, and agreements for introduction. This month, we have ordinance 06-2020, budget amendment number 3. Jim, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The highlighted version is we have a number of things that are being rolled to next year. The work on Bollinger Park has proceeded slower than expected, so we are going to push that into FY21. And on the revenue, on the revenue side, that's a reimbursement. So since we have not been able to really move forward with that as quickly as hoped, we haven't spent the money, so we haven't been reimbursed. So you'll see that under the expenditures section, Bollinger Park decreases by $146,000 as was expected to be spent on it this year. So that'll go again forward to FY21. Our HUR money, due to the pandemic effects of that and the lower guest tax revenue and so on, we did see a hit there of $36,360. So that is that much less than expected that we will see from our HUR money. So that's reducing our revenues as well. So, and we are also not going to be using as much of fund balance as anticipated as well, because we've not done some of the projects that we had anticipated doing. On the expenditure side, again, Bollinger Park, we did not move as quickly as we had hoped on that. And the police vehicles that we had ordered were not built because of the pandemic and shutdowns. So those will not be delivered until FY21. So that's another $89,000 that's being moved over to next year. So the vast majority is really things, rolling forward that's just, we're not accomplished this year. We're not spent this year. So that's pretty much sums it up. If anyone has questions, I can take a shot at answering, or, I can always follow up with the treasurer as needed and have answers by Monday if it's too complicated for me.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Jim, the two vehicles that weren't built, won't be built in 21, we still have enough vehicles currently, right? These are just change outs.
That's correct. Yes, these were just vehicles that were going to be retired. There's not a critical need to take them out of the fleet at this point. It's just part of the regularly scheduled rotation of vehicles. I guess the consequence from doing this is we already had intended to purchase vehicles in FY21 as part of that year's rotation. So we are going to end up with having our the age of our fleet is going to be skewed a little bit compared to normal. So we're going to have a number of the same year vehicles instead of having 2020 model year vehicles and then some 21s. We're probably going to have more 21 model years. So that's going to be something the chief will just have to manage going forward. So, and the mayor let me know that he's having some technical difficulties, so he's left the meeting and will be working to rejoin us here any moment. So, is there anything else on the budget amendment? Okay. Well, next on the agenda, unless the Mayor Pro Tem wants to jump in for a moment, would be the water resolution. So if there are any questions on that, I'd be happy to address those.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. It just, everything catastrophically failed up here. All right. Did I miss anything in my absence?
Just answering a question on the budget amendment regarding the police vehicles. So we were about ready to move on to the water resolution.
All right. Very good. Then we shall do that. I imagine everything's satisfactory with the budget amendment now. If not, you can catch me up a little bit later. Up for adoption on Monday evening is Resolution 2020-09, our water allocation for August of 2020. Are there any comments or questions on the water allocations? All right. I'm going to assume not, although everyone is once again frozen on my screen. So I'm getting nowhere. I'm going to throw it back over to Jim for the city manager report.
Alrighty. I had made a note to myself before I get into the usual part of my report, just a reminder for when the council packets are sent out, if everyone could please make an effort to sign for the documents. That way we know that everyone has received them. And if there's any problems or you're having difficulty signing for them, please let me know and we can help out with that. But just kind of a little reminder to please sign for the packet once we send it out to you. That way we know it's been successfully transmitted to everybody. So
it might get better this month. I signed as soon as I got it.
Well done, Diane. Thank you. So, okay. So that way we don't have to worry. So anyhow, a couple updates. The Roberts Mill Run Stormwater Management retrofit and the O'Brien Avenue Bridge are both substantially complete. Kevin Smeek and I took a quick visit to the site today just to put eyes on it and see if there are any issues as the county's working to close things out. There's still a little bit more work to be done on the bridge. We're waiting for fencing to be delivered and installed. That's why the bridge has not been opened yet. I felt like we have lived this long with two halves of O'Brien Avenue that weren't connected, that another couple weeks waiting for the fencing is probably acceptable. I would rather do that than open the bridge and have some incident occur and be blamed for opening the bridge without fencing. So hopefully folks will just bear with us while we wait for that to be delivered and installed. But that's the remaining item on the bridge. And there will be some landscaping, some planting to be done around the edge of the wet pool portion of the pond. And for those who may not remember or be familiar with the project, this new pond is designed to be a wet pond where a portion of it will stay wet pretty much year round. I mean, during drought conditions, it may, the water level is going to go down or it may eventually dry up in an extreme drought, but it's designed to always have a wet pool. And then of course, after rain events, the pond will get much, much deeper, much larger. So around the area that's designated to remain wet, there is going to be some aquatic vegetation planted, and also some planting just above the water line. So those are being done under separate contract with the county. So that will be coming in the fall. They didn't want to schedule planting in the middle and the driest part of summer. So it's nearly done, but not quite. Moving on to City Hall. After the reports were submitted, got some news that while we had hoped that things would be substantially complete this coming Monday, or Tuesday rather, we got word that the entry door is not going to be delivered until Monday. So that's going to push things back a little farther, because there will be once the entryway is installed, there will be some new framing and drywall and insulation and things on the lower part below the window, as was the case with the old entryway. You might remember there was kind of a shelf below the window in the front, in the lobby. So we'll still have that. That'll have to be built after the manufactured entryway is installed. So all in all, the building is shaping up. Most of the doors are hung, drywall's in. Some of the ceiling tiles with the lighting and the motion detectors and fire alarm strobes and things like that are in place. The security company was out today, is going to be out again tomorrow and again next week. We're doing some upgrades with new motion detectors and basically a new control system to bring the alarm system up to basically current date. So we are getting there, but it's going to be a few more weeks. We do have another progress meeting next month, and there are some things related to the security system and door strikes and things like that we're trying to work out the details on. So I was amazed that the submittal for door hardware was like 68 pages long. So there's a lot of minutia that goes into this, as I'm learning. So, but we are getting there. No update on Trevanian Terrace. And let's see, with regard to COVID-19 and the pandemic, still working out some protocols, particularly for when we do move everybody back into the building here. We intend to err on the side of caution. We will probably adopt some policies similar to those of Carroll County as far as visitors to the building, and also have some mask protocols in place for when we are not at our own workspaces. And we've already instituted some of those. For example, when Dan and Jacob, our IT folks, have to go to somebody else's office to assist with their systems, they are wearing a mask. And when we are not able to socially distance, we're all getting in the habit of pulling up masks and so on. So I guess the new normal, at least for the coming months. So hopefully we'll have that in place as we move towards reopening the building. And let's see. Brian made mention of this. This is really under the Public Works Department's report, but since that really would be our next agenda piece, if anybody has questions for me, I'll go ahead and field them now. But I do have a few things to speak to with regard to the Micro C and a couple things on Kevin's report.
All right. Does the council have any questions on the city manager report before we move on to departmental? Councilman Vigliotti?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, so questions about Kevin's report we'll do next, but not right now.
Correct. Right now we're doing city manager report.
Okay, so as far as the O'Brien Avenue Bridge is concerned, are we going to have, once it's safe to do so, some kind of like grand opening ceremony? Because I mean, it's not every day we have a bridge built in town, and I think given the fact that we had all these agencies and so much effort that went into this, I think it's probably something that we can kind of laud.
All I can think is COVID restrictions. We'll have a discussion. Yeah, we'll have some discussions about that, considering current environment and those things, but that is a good thought. Any other questions on city manager report? All right, Jim, if you want to move into departmental reports.
Sure. I did want to speak a bit to, first off, in Kevin's report, he does make mention of some water conservation measures. While certainly in recent days, we've had some significant rains, we have had something of a drought condition leading up to this. And as you might have noticed with Kevin's report with the well levels, that we are seeing some drops. Nothing overly concerning at this point, but we are recommending that we institute phase 1 water restrictions, which is voluntary restrictions, essentially just encouraging everyone to use all practical means to conserve water, both indoors and outdoors. Phase 1 that was established by resolution many years ago is just a voluntary step, but it is done through executive order by the mayor. And so Kevin and I are making that recommendation for the mayor. But again, since we're not in an urgent situation, so we felt we could wait until the council meeting and share that news with everybody and help to get the word out this way as well.
All right, with that, with recommendation from Jim and Kevin, I will be signing that executive order. They're preparing it now, so that will be put into place. We're starting to see some rain come back. Obviously, going to take a little time to recharge all of that, but be looking for information on that on city social media and websites. Anything else on departmental reports, Jim?
Yes, I did want to talk about the micro C. As was noted in Brian's presentation, to do everything that's required to install the larger storage tank and buy the product in bulk exceeds the 20 threshold, at which point we normally bid projects. I intend to, and as Brian mentioned, this is a proprietary project or brand that we've been using at the plant. So it may be something that we can qualify under a sole source purchase, but we'll be working over the next week or so to ensure to see if there's a way we can move forward with the project more quickly without having to develop a bid specification request for proposals and put it out to bid. So we hope to keep this project moving. But again, the total cost of everything involved is going to be over $25,000. So we're exploring how we can break the project out and whether it qualifies as something that we can do sole source. But I just wanted to keep you informed on that. And there's a memo from CDM Smith that follows Kevin's report. So please do take a look at that. And that it provides a very strong case, I think, for moving forward with the project. And I just really wanted to share that and make sure that everybody was on board with moving ahead with this micro C. So, and I'd be happy to field any questions. And this is part of why Brian stuck around. So if anybody has questions about it, fire away.
Jim, I did read that report and I have no problem with moving forward with it.
Thank you.
Same here.
I have a couple questions, if I might.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the voluntary water conservation part of this, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument that, between now and within the next 2 weeks, we have no more rain at all. And the ground obviously is not able to recharge the aquifer, the water that we've consumed. Would the institution of a mandatory water conservation, would that be another executive order, Mr. Mayor?
Can you repeat your question? You were breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. So let's say that between now and within the next couple of weeks, we have no more rain, the aquifer does not recharge, and we have to institute mandatory water restrictions. Is that another executive order that you would be able to issue?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you very much for that. My next question is about the I guess the purchase price for the storage tanks, if I might. So I noticed on the on page 2 of the I guess it would be the proposal invoice. It notes that the shipping cost is firmly fixed. So I was wondering if maybe there's any flexibility with regards to the pricing of the containers themselves, given that they went out of their way to say, well, the pricing is fixed, is definitely fixed with the shipping cost, but whether or not any of the other prices that might be associated with this are flexible or open to negotiation.
I guess I can take a shot at answering that. Yeah, I did not pick up on that detail. Typically, and I would go back to look to be sure, but typically those quotations are good for 30 days. By the time we were making this request, I suppose there could be an increase in price, as opposed to micro C or the biomag process. There are many vendors that sell tanks. HDPE tanks of this size in this variety. So this is just one that we reached out to. When Jim was speaking to how this project could be broken up into a couple different pieces, I would recommend that we would go, at a minimum, we could make requests with a very simple set of, a bullet point type spec of requirements, just to get some competitive pricing. This vendor that we happened to get a price on was just to get an idea about what it would cost. In all reality, all of them are in the same ballpark. They all kind of sell the same thing. But that's all that was intended. But yeah, we would competitively bid that portion of the project. Would be my recommendation.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And Mr. Mayor, I have one last question, and I apologize. I meant to ask this during the city manager report portion of the agenda, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. I wanted to ask Jim about if there was any update to our parking program. I know everything got delayed with coronavirus and everything, but I was just wondering if we had advanced any with the free parking program for customers of local businesses.
Sure. I think we should be ready to roll that out in the beginning of September. Chief Etzler and I have had a few conversations on it, and basically we're opting for the most simple approach from an enforcement standpoint that we can. While I personally favor the idea of there being a time limit on the permits, we have settled on them being good for an entire day, just to make it less complicated and create less of an enforcement burden for the officers. So basically, it's the permits as have been envisioned previously have a spot for the date and for the merchant's information to go on there. We can print those up, require that the merchants fill out the date before they hand them to the patrons, so that we don't have blank permits floating around. They would be good for the day, placed in the windshield, pretty straightforward. If it's in the windshield, they don't get a ticket for an expired meter that day, but they are going to be only good for the day. The city will print a supply of these up, at least for the pilot program. We talked a bit about there being a unique identifier for each permit, but that would be rather cumbersome to go back and develop, especially for a trial. So the permits probably will not end up being numbered individually, but we will just require the merchants to put their store name on there in the space provided. So we're trying to keep it simple, and we will reach out to all of the downtown businesses that are within the metered area and invite them to participate in the pilot. And those who do wish to participate, we will provide a supply of the passes along with the instructions and limitations for the passes. For example, they are to be for patrons only and not for staff, not for owners and employees to park in front of the businesses. That kind of defeats the purpose, but it's been known to happen. And just a few other instructions for them. So I think it's going to be very straightforward. The current passes, specifically have 2020 on them. I know the initial plan was to do a pilot for a year, but I think by doing it for fourth quarter, it also encompasses the holiday shopping season, assuming that we're able to enjoy that type of a shopping season this year. I guess time will tell. But I think we are ready to roll this out in September. So that's where we are.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jim. And I also think that, strangely enough, right, it's again, given the tragedy of the situation, the pandemic that we find ourselves in, this is almost almost another way for the city kind of to help out businesses that are struggling by, in this very small way, giving customers, another option or better options to get into businesses. So I think that I want to commend, the mayor and council and everybody for getting behind this program. Thank you, Jim, to all of the work that you and Chief Etzler have done on this. And I just, thank you very much for the update.
All right. Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from the council for departmental reports? All right. I will ask.
Mayor, I'm so sorry. There was one more. I apologize for that. It was something that I noticed on Kevin's report for Department of Public Works. On item number 7, he states the leak that the leak we had recently has brought to the attention for the need to have proper equipment for handling water leaks in the future. And I was just curious because he didn't mention what equipment that they needed, if we already had it, or if this was something that we would have to go ahead and acquire.
Well, I can answer that question. As you're all aware, there was a very large water main break on Baumgartner Avenue at Tawny Heights. And the water was coming out at such a magnitude that the 3 pumps Public Works has couldn't get the water out fast enough as much as it was going in. And they had a very difficult time finding the valve to shut off the water to that. I think they shut off somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 valves until they found out that the one at Roth in East Baltimore was the one that shut it off. So there was a time where they were trying to figure out if they were going to have to fix this while under pressure. I was able to call Jim Parker and ask if the fire department could come out with a pump and help pump the water out of this giant hole in the road. They came out, they hooked up their much nicer pump. I think it works on a 3-inch hose. Very impressive piece of machinery. We looked it up. Kevin, Jim, and I had looked it up and talked about it, and I believe Public Works wants to acquire 1 or 2 of those for that sort of magnitude. But I believe that specifically as type of equipment he was talking about were some more industrial grade pumps to more quickly get them out of those situations. But I do appreciate the fire department helping out. They came out and really lending a hand in that situation. If you didn't get to see it, it was a very tremendous water main break. It really buckled that road up badly. But they did a great job. I appreciate all their efforts, especially happening on a Friday late afternoon or early evening. It made for a long night for them. Does that answer your question, Councilman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Jim, go ahead.
I would like to add one thing with regard to that water leak, aside from reiterating the same thank yous to the fire department and Public Works for getting in there and getting that job done. The cost of repairing Baumgartner Avenue, we would like to, and I will ask to have this on Monday's agenda, we would like to have you authorize the use of restricted funds from the water benefit assessment money to cover the street repair that was necessary because of the water leak. we would like to reserve our HUR money for our standard street paving, and we had to dip into that already to do some of the repairs related to the Roberts Mill Stormwater Management Pond from all the dump truck traffic. And the county was able to assist us with the cost of those repairs. So we're certainly appreciative for that. But we would like to have authorization to move money from restricted funds to help pay for the street repairs related to the water main break. And that can be on Monday's agenda.
Very good. We will add that to the agenda for Monday evening for council's consideration and hopeful approval. Last question while we're on departmental reports, and this will go to Jim and possibly Brian as well. Several months ago, there was talk about the water tower and standpipe. I think we were putting together a request for proposals on that. Have we gone anywhere with it, or has that gone to a back burner?
It is on the back burner. We do have a draft RFP, though. It's just a matter of fine tuning it and making sure that we have not made it too specific.
Right.
There are not many firms that offer the ongoing maintenance service that we are looking for, but we don't want to tailor the RFP too specifically to one company either. So we're trying to hit that balance and just need some fine tuning, but it's almost there.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that update. Anyone else from council? Questions on departmental reports? All right, Jay, I'm going to wake you up and ask for your legal report.
I'm going to be brief. I'm going to start out with the saying all our mothers taught us, that if you can't say anything good, you shouldn't say anything at all. And so it can't be overstated about how much effort people have put into this Taneytown crossing project. I know everybody got the kudos, but you want to hear it from me, is that Brian and Jim really worked tirelessly to get these maps done in a timely manner. The county, they couldn't have done more for us at the county. The mayor, he had to almost be a persona non grata, bothering people to try to get them to help us at the end of the hour. And to the point where we made ourselves probably pains to people, and that's saying it nicely. MDE really went out overboard. I mean, MDE is a big organization, so the people we're dealing with could not have done more for us, to the point where they had the secretary on the call and he took a personal interest in it. So those are all the really winners in this whole thing. I'm going to follow my mother's advice and not say bad stuff. I'll do what lawyers do. I'll put that in writing to you. There were some non-winners in this whole situation, and non-cooperative people and entities that we probably need to talk about when this is all over, because we're not done yet. We want to at least get across the finish line, but we probably want to talk about what can be done to avoid similar situations where common sense is trumped by bureaucracy. So while I don't have much more to tell you, I can tell you that that was a daily project for every one of us, at least for the past month. And we're almost done. We hope that things will be wrapped up by the end of this month, and that Taneytown crossing will be on their way. So, and that's all I have for right now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gullo. I will tell you, I am counting down the days. August 27th is the day that we need all this wrapped up by, and 22 days to go. And as long as everything falls into place as perfectly as possible, it'll be a giant success. I know we've talked about that a lot tonight, but if you could just see all of these guys in action during the past month getting this thing through, it's phenomenal. I know the developer is very appreciative at all the efforts. Any questions for Mr. Gullo on his legal report? No? All right. Thank you, sir. We have nothing in old business. We're going to move into our new business, monthly financial report. Every month we go through this. Are there any questions or concerns with our monthly financial report from the council? Very good. I will then ask the same of the accounts payables. Everyone satisfied? Very good. Both of those you'll see Monday evening for your approval. Next up, we have our Head Start lease renewal. For those of you who you should all be aware at this point, there is a Head Start program through the Baltimore Archdiocese, if that's correct. They meet in the small building at Roberts Mill Park, and we give them a very discounted lease on that. And this is simply renewing that for another year. Are there any questions or concerns about that lease renewal for this year? I believe everything is remaining the same as it has been. Is that correct, Mr. Weeper? Very good. Councilman Bigliotti, I saw your hand.
Not so much a concern at all about with the arrangement. I was just kind of curious as when things are safe to do so. I'd love to have a tour of what they actually do with the place inside, because I've never had a chance to see inside what they do with it. I know they do wonderful things, and I know that this Head Start program is a really important thing, and I'm just kind of curious as to how everything works.
Very good. We'll look at that in the future. I don't imagine it'll be a very long tour. It is a very small building. But nonetheless, they do serve an important function to the residents of the city. With nothing else there, we'll move into, from the Parks and Rec Department, our memorandums of understanding. More specifically, we have the sport organizations listed here. Are there any comments, questions, concerns, etc., from what you see in your packet? Councilman Vigliotti?
Just two very quick questions. First of all, has to just to do with the basic construction of the MOUs. I noticed with each one of them, for example, on the first page of the FSK Junior Eagles lacrosse, the first subsection is number 1, and then that works its way through. I think it's number 11, 6 or 7, but each memorandum no longer starts out at 1. It starts out with the last succeeding number from the previous one. So, for example, 1 ends at 11, but then starts at number 12 on the next piece. So I was wondering if that was just an error or whether that was intentional, that there was going to be some kind of like overarching, like omnibus MOU that was going to incorporate all of these in one specific piece.
I believe that's a result of all of them getting put into one master Word document, and it kept the outline process in. That'll get repaired. And to the organization. But thank you for catching that. That's a simple thing to fix.
Okay. And then I have just one more question. It would be on the second page of every single one of them, under number 3, subsection A, number 1. It talks about schedules having to be submitted at least 30 days prior. Whereas in other sections, it talks about who certain things have to be submitted to. It doesn't say in this particular section who those schedules have to be submitted to. And I would guess that would be Lorena, right? It would be our Parks and Rec director.
Stand by. I'm just reading through.
Okay.
All right. So you're looking under, again, general terms and conditions, field scheduling.
Yes, sir. And then number 1. And then it's a couple of, it's the third line down. Complete regular season schedule should be submitted at least 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. But unless I've missed it, and I very well could have missed it, it doesn't say who those specific schedules have to be submitted to.
Gotcha. I would assume that it means the Parks and Rec director. If we feel that we want that spelled out, we can do so. I don't know how that is, but
I mean, from my perspective, anyways, we are being careful, and we have spelled out these things in other sections. For me, anyways, it would make me feel more comfortable just to include that one piece there.
All right. Very good. We can make a note and pass that on to Lorena to add that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Anyone else have anything on the MOUs? Very good. It's very nice to see some of these things in writing now. Some agreements between the city and these great sports organizations that do a lot of great work, but there's always been some sort of ambiguity between the two. So it's great that Lorena took this on and worked individually with each organization to customize it to what they need, and also what the city needs. So that will be up for approval on Monday night. I assume these have been reviewed by Mr. Gullo. Is that correct?
That is correct. They've all been reviewed and they all meet legal sufficiency.
Great. Thank you. It's always nice to hear those words. Finally, we have the town-county agreement. My understanding is that this has not changed since last year, except for, I believe, some of the basic figures that may change. Is that correct, Mr. Weepick?
It is. I can point out the specific changes here in a second. As soon as I find them in my stack of papers. Okay. So the overall grant fund last year was $406,359. So it's up this year by $3,905. The road funds are unchanged under the, and I'm looking at page 3, by the way, of the agreement. Under the NPDES section at the bottom of page 3, that has gone up $422. It was $13,261 last year. And on the top of page 4, the memorandum of agreement that provides for these stormwater retrofit projects like the Robertson Run that we talked about earlier, that is remaining the same. You may recall that in that agreement, those of you who were on board when it was executed, that there was language in there that kept the agreement in place for the duration of the NPDES permit. That permit has, of course, expired, and the new permit has been contested and has not been finalized. So we operate under the old permit until the new one is finalized. So the MOA did specify that it would be in place until basically for the life of the permit. We don't anticipate any significant changes to the MOA, although the dollar amounts may change as we negotiate that for the new permit. But with regard to this $68,905, that is the same figure as last year. This was discussed in the Water Resources Coordination Council, and the county feels they are able to continue delivering the stormwater management retrofit projects with meeting our cost per acre figure that was in place for the past year. So they feel like they can continue on with that figure being the same as last year and continue to do these projects with the municipalities. So that was not specifically called out in the MOA, while the agreement did speak to what happens if the permit expires and a new one's not approved. It did not specifically address the funding. But through the WRCC, we came to consensus that we couldn't really balk at keeping the funding level for the year because, as you may recall, it has increased each year during the 5 years of the permit. So this year is kind of a level funding to get us one more year of projects. So that highlights the changes.
Very good. Any questions from council on this year's town-county agreement? Very good. It's very straightforward this year. I'm satisfied that they're keeping it consistent year to year. It's always interesting to see what they're going to come up with, but they're doing well. I'm very pleased. I'm going to open it up. Anyone else have any new business they'd like to bring up this evening? It's not even 9 o'clock yet. Nope. If everyone is satisfied, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, that is a motion by Councilman Hale with a second by Mayor Pro Tem Foster. All in favor of adjourning, signify with your thumbs up. And we are adjourned unanimously. Thank you.